Really finished with this is what I was going to say at the end.
Okay.
The fact that we didn't have a lot of things and stuff or money, and none of us, no people, none of us did, and none of my friends did either. But in our house, the most important thing we had was love. My dad and mother were always there for us. We knew that. We knew that when we went away from home. He would always help us. And that's the most important thing in life.
Yeah.
Now what? Now what?
You're right about that. Tell us about tell me about your parents. What did they do? Your mom was a homemaker and raising 4 daughters.
Oh yeah, mother just stayed at home and took care of
That was a lot.
took care of us. Oh yes, yes.
And your dad worked.
At the school
At the
and
school.
at the county. In the summertime, he was on the road doing repair work for the county school system.
And
He was one of the few parents that actually had a cash job. You know.
Well, that's right. Tell
The
us
other
about
people,
that.
the farmers, were just about the only cash they would have, and there were small farms around our town. They would sell eggs and cream, and that was about the cash that those kids had. But everybody had lots of food. We had big gardens. I can remember cleaning the produce from the gardens. We would have bushels of peas to clean. Bushels, I mean bushels.
Mm-hmm.
I can remember that. You know how many peas it would take to make a quart can of canned peas. Took a lot of them. So there was always work to do. But that didn't hurt any of us. We learned how to work
Mm-hmm.
when we were younger.
And I know you were an outdoor girl. You said you were kind of a tomboy. And
Always wore I wore jeans most of the time. And I was very competitive. I loved sports. And my biggest aim in life till I was 14 years old was to beat the boys in a ball game or sledding or skiing, one or the other.
Mm-hmm.
I was very competitive.
I think you still are. I've played cards with you. And how did you get along with your sisters?
Oh, I didn't have any trouble with my sisters much, but the 3 girls used to do a lot of arguing about what they had to do. But they used to call me Millie Run because every time they wanted something, Millie Run and get this for me. I was sort of their gopher, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But that was all right.
Now there was a big gap between you and
4
your
years.
sisters.
So I was in high school for 4. I was with my parents for 4 years all by myself. Just exactly like my daughter Patsy's boy Robbie said he had the best 4 years with his mother too.
Actually, I did
And
that
it's true because they didn't have anybody else to compete against.
That's right, in those years. You told me there was music in your home as a young girl. What was?
Oh yeah, my oldest sister was a very good pianist, and she at 14, when she was in high school, she played in a dance band. She's the only one that made extra money for herself. Her other sisters were a little jealous of that, I think, but she'd play at dances on Saturday night. And then she'd practice every night after dinner. She'd practice every night. We'd all stand around and sing. We knew all the new dance music and stuff, which was fun.
From her learning. And she got out of the dishes that way, didn't she?
Oh, she on a Saturday night she never washed dishes because she had to do her nails so that they would look nice when she played the piano.
Oh,
I mean, that was the sisters. I never paid any. I used to sit. What I enjoyed doing was sitting and watching her get ready before she went.
Oh, did you?
Oh, I said I wish I was old enough to do that, to wear those clothes and
Oh, sure.
that. I can remember that.
Nice. But I wanted to get a little bit of a world view at that time. So, any time between 1919 and say 1929, in your first 10 years, do you remember who was president at that time?
Franklin D. Roosevelt. I didn't think there would ever be another president. I mean, for 8 years, all 8 years I was in grade school, he was president. And then by the time I got into high school, I had more other interests, more than I never thought about it much until I got out of high school and got into working and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
Then you start voting and knowing
No,
what's
a
going
lot of,
on.
a lot of things were happening during that time. And Eleanor Roosevelt too, who was very iconic in our history as an active woman in the government too.
Yeah,
An active first lady.
uh-huh. Yeah, Mrs. Roosevelt.
Mm-hmm. Very much so.
Yeah. Amelia Earhart.
Who were the
Amelia Earhart.
important
we
people of
had
that time?
the only communications we had was the radio, of course, radio and newspapers. I mean, that's how we got our information.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're younger, you don't pay too much attention to that until you get older.
Right.
But you'd hear all those special things that would happen. And I can remember hearing about the 1929 crash, depression crash.
You
when
remember
everybody-
hearing about that?
When all the wealthy people lost their interest. I mean, they were
That was
committed
1929.
suicide. They committed suicide. They lost everything. But it didn't affect us any particular, because we didn't have any money to invest, you know. I mean, we were just living the same. So that part didn't bother me. You know, we didn't know too much about it,
It's interesting.
except
Uh-huh.
it didn't actually affect ordinary people that were just,
Mm-hmm.
I don't think, people didn't have investments in those years like they do now, you know.
I see.
There wasn't any money.
So life went on the same. But you did hear about world events
Oh
through
yes,
the
you'd hear
newspaper
about them, but you didn't worry about them or think too much about them at that age.
and
I
newsreels at the movies.
Yeah.
Right?
But yeah, we go to a movie, it would be. And by the way, at that time too, when my sister was playing in the dance orchestra, she also played for silent movies.
She
We
did?
had silent movies. And you know, we had them in Gordon's Hall.
No, I didn't know that.
I can remember being up there, coming in our building. They'd be up there.
Silent movies.
She never could have her music. She just had to play by ear because there was never a light on of any kind.
Mm-hmm.
And I can remember the Western movies when the horses were going. She certain pieces. I can remember certain pieces she played when the horses were running.
Creating excitement.
Yeah,
or-
excitement.
How interesting. Another celebrity at that time, I think, was Charles Lindbergh. Do you remember?
Oh yes, when
Hearing
his
about him?
when his baby was
Yeah.
abducted. And, oh yes.
And then he did the first transatlantic flight.
Oh yeah.
So you do remember hearing about
Oh yeah,
that?
I remember hearing about. But see, they didn't mean too much to me.
Okay. Do you remember, did your dad have a car? How did you get around?
My dad never got a car till I was a senior in high school because he would not buy one until he could pay cash for it. And there was no such thing as credit cards. I mean, maybe there were. We sure didn't have any anyway. And I can remember he bought this little Ford, two-door Ford, for $500. Can you believe that?
And it was new?
A brand new car at $500. But that $500 took a long time to save, I'll tell you, because he sent all my sisters through college. My three older sisters, one was a nurse, the other two were teachers.
Wow.
And then I came along and he sent me to school with my dad, because I just would not ask him to take him to have. I was so afraid I would have hurt that new car. He was so proud of that car.
Well, now
That was the only car that he had until he died, too, come to think
Is
of
that
it.
right?
Yes.
Did your mom drive?
No, oh no, huh? No, she didn't drive.
Did women not drive then, or what? What was the deal?
What was that?
Did women not drive, or
Who,
in general, did women
oh, I don't know about that.
just
There
in-
weren't that many cars around. In high school, when I went to high school, one of the boys, Leonard from home, his folks had a car, and it wasn't his car; it was his folks' car. But he was the one we had to depend on all the time for getting around.
Is that
You know,
right?
to extra things that the bus didn't go to, because we had a bus that took us to most places in high school.
So there were some places in Mitzvah that you had to drive to.
Well, not in Mitzvah, you didn't. This is
Oh.
in school, when you went to high school 5 miles away
I see.
in
Well,
Northome.
tell us a little bit about high school. So you got on a bus and you went to
Oh
North
yes, they
Home.
picked us up, and they picked all the kids and took them. We had a high school in Mizpah for 2 years. My two older sisters had 2 years of high school in Mizpah, but then they took the high school from there to Northville.
I see.
So I went all 4 years to Northville.
Okay.
But you know, everything, there was always activities after I was in everything in high school. There was basketball practice and there was play practice and so you'd have to stay after school for practice. That's when Letter's car came in handy because he always was in everything too, and he'd take us home. We'd get a ride home.
So it sounds like you really blossomed in high school.
Oh,
Is it because it was a small school, so everyone was involved in
Well,
everything?
It's true. When you're in a smaller school, you can take part in things. You don't have to be that good to take part in everything. But not all the kids did that. But we had a class that was very active and wanted to do everything. We had fun. I was president for a couple of years.
How many were in your class?
Huh?
How many were in your class?
Only 13. 13 of us.
You were president of class of 13.
Yeah.
And it was actually the president of the class of 1937. Is that
Yeah,
right?
that was the class of 37, yeah.
That was your graduating year.
37.
And so you were in sports. You played basketball. You loved basketball, didn't
Oh,
you?
I loved basketball. I played all 4 years. We had a wonderful team, simply because at that time, even teacher jobs were hard to get. And this man came to teach 7th and 8th grade in Northome. He was a coach. He was a basketball coach, but our principal was the boys coach, so there was no job for him. So he took us girls. And boy, he made us do things just like the
Toe
boys
the line.
did. We had a terrific team. We never lost a game. I can't remember losing a game all the time I was in the 4 years in high school.
Really?
We played Fort Francis. We didn't play in International Falls. We played a couple of times, and we played the smaller schools that were more our size schools.
Was the women's team doing better than the men's?
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
And do you remember your uniform from that time?
Did I what?
Do you remember your uniform? What it looked like?
Oh, we had to make our own. That was during the Depression when the school systems had no extra money for anything. And we had to make our own uniforms in home ec. They were black, and our colors were black and orange, and we made the black shorts and the orange tops, which I hated those orange tops.
You know, a lot of kids don't even know what home ec is.
Oh, don't
No, they
home
don't
ec?
have that anymore.
Oh,
What was home ec?
oh, we had a home ec teacher. We just had sewing.
Home ec was when girls learned
Yeah,
to be homemakers.
sure, to make home.
There was an actual class for that.
And then later on in the bigger schools, they had cooking and they had more things than we did. Because the poor teachers that we had in our high school had to, our English teacher had to teach French, which she wasn't very good at. We never did learn much on that. But and she also, and then the other teachers that did the other things had to pick up like home ec. I mean, they could not afford to hire teachers for each thing.
Designated.
Yeah, so
subject.
they had to. That's why that coach, that basketball coach of ours, had to take the girls' course. He ended up with the state tournament one year when I was in the cities. He was a wonderful coach. He had gotten a bigger school and later on and took over on the range. And he won the state tournament. I was down there working at the time I went to see him. It was fun.
Okay.